In that year, what I did do a lot was looking at all sorts of surveys, looking at a lot of data on this subject. And it turns out that men and women report very, very similar levels of happiness. This is a very quick overview of all the studies that I looked at. That climate plays no role, that if you live in the best climate in San Diego in the United States or in the shittiest climate in Buffalo, New York, you are gonna be just as happy in either places. If you make more than $50,000 a year in the US, any salary increase you're gonna experience will have only tiny influence on your overall well-being. Black people are just as happy as white people are. If you're old or young, doesn't really make a difference. If you're ugly or if you're really good looking, makes no difference whatsoever. You will adapt to it and get used to it. If you have manageable health problems, doesn't really matter. Now, this does matter. So now the woman on the right is actually much happier than the guy on the left, meaning that if you have a lot of friends and you have meaningful friendships, that does make a lot of difference. As well as being married, you are likely to be much happier than if you're single.
First, your close relationships. These are the people that you can call on for a loan if you need money suddenly, who will call the doctor if you're not feeling well, or who will take you to the hospital, or who will sit with you if you're having an existential crisis, if you're in despair. How many people do you talk to? And these mean both your weak and your strong bonds. So not just the people you're really close to who mean a lot to you, but like, do you talk to the guy who every day makes you your coffee? Do you talk to the postman? Do you talk to the woman who walks by your house every day with her dog? Do you play bridge or poker or have a book club? I call this building your village, and building it and sustaining it is a matter of life and death.
What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your time and your energy? What if we could watch entire lives as they unfold through time? What if we could study people from the time that they were teenagers all the way into old age to see what really keeps people happy and healthy? Well, the lessons aren't about wealth or fame or working harder and harder. The clearest message that we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. And it's not whether or not you're in a committed relationship, but it's the quality of your close relationships that matters. It turns out that living in the midst of conflict is really bad for our health. High conflict marriages, for example, without much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health, perhaps worse than getting divorced. And living in the midst of good, warm relationships is protective. Connections are really good for us, and that loneliness kills. It turns out that people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to community, are happier, they're physically healthier, and they live longer than people who are less well connected. And the experience of loneliness turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be from others find that they are less happy, their health declines earlier in midlife, their brain functioning declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. And we know that you can be lonely in a crowd and you can be lonely in a marriage. And good, close relationships seem to buffer us from some of the slings and arrows of getting old. The people who are in relationships where they really feel they can count on the other person in times of need, those people's memories stay sharper longer. And those good relationships, they don't have to be smooth all the time. So, this message that good, close relationships are good for our health and well-being, this is wisdom that's as old as the hills. Why is this so hard to get and so easy to ignore? Well, we're human. What we'd really like is a quick fix, something we can get that'll make our lives good and keep them that way. Relationships are messy and they're complicated, and the hard work of tending to family and friends, it's not sexy or glamorous. It's also lifelong. It never ends. So what about you? Let's say you're 25, or you're 40, or you're 60. What might leaning into relationships even look like? Well, the possibilities are practically endless. It might be something as simple as replacing screen time with people time, or livening up a stale relationship by doing something new together, long walks or date nights, or reaching out to that family member who you haven't spoken to in years. I'd like to close with a quote from Mark Twain. More than a century ago, he was looking back on his life, and he wrote this: "There isn't time, so brief is life, for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There is only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that. The good life is built with good relationships." Thank you.